My name is Paige Dawson. I'm 32 years old, and the first time I saw my biological family in 20 years. They were standing beneath my porch camera with 4 stuffed bags and desperation written across their faces. My father pressed the doorbell again and again. "Please forgive us. We've missed you so much." My mother stared past him at my house. "Your home is huge. You have plenty of room. Can we stay here?" My sister stepped closer to the camera. "We haven't eaten in 3 days. Please." I stayed behind the locked door and answered through the speaker. "Which child are you talking about? Whose child? Because I'm not yours. You made that decision 20 years ago. Now leave." Their expressions changed instantly. The sadness disappeared. Something colder replaced it. My father planted his hands against the security door while my mother began pointing at the room she could see through the windows. That was when I understood they had not come to apologize. They had come to claim what I had built. Before I tell you why I never went back, tell me what time it is where you are, and whether blood alone makes someone family. To understand why I kept that door locked, I have to take you back to Fort Wayne, Indiana, in the summer of 2006. Back then, I was Paige Mercer, 12 years old and permanently classified as the difficult child in a family that looked respectable from the outside. My father, Randall Mercer, owned Mercer Heating and Cooling, a small HVAC company that serviced homes and businesses across the county. Customers liked him because he remembered their names, laughed loudly, and offered discounts to local churches. My mother, Patricia, managed the appointments, invoices, and employee schedules. People called her the reason the business stayed organized. My 15-year-old sister, Brooke, was the family star. She competed in pageants, appeared in local department store advertisements, and attended dance classes 4 evenings a week. Randall told anyone who would listen that Brooke was destined to become famous. I was interested in different things. I liked old buildings, floor plans, measurements, and the way separate pieces could be fitted together to create something strong. I could look at a room once and remember the position of every door and window. At school, my teachers praised my design projects and spatial reasoning. At home, taking a moment to think before answering was treated as proof that I was slow. Randall called me the family delight. Patricia told me I made simple situations complicated. Brooke used the word idiot so often that eventually my parents began repeating it as though it were my actual nickname. Their treatment of me was rarely dramatic enough to alarm outsiders. Instead, it came through 1,000 small humiliations. When I corrected a measurement Randall had written down at a hardware store, he told me that smart people should be able to find their own way home. He drove away and made me walk nearly 4 miles. When my school selected my model community center for a regional design exhibition, Patricia withdrew my entry because Brooke needed someone to carry costumes at a pageant that same afternoon. Brooke once snapped the roof from a model house I had spent 3 weeks building. She told Randall the structure had collapsed because I had measured it incorrectly. He ordered me to apologize for embarrassing the with poor work. The To Chicago began when Brooke received a call back for a department store advertising campaign. The audition was being held in a downtown studio, and Randall spoke about it as if a Hollywood producer had already offered her a contract. I begged to stay with a neighbor, but Patricia said Brooke had too many garment bags and needed help carrying them. Before sunrise, we loaded the company's dark blue SUV and headed west. Several hours into the trip, Randall handed me a folded road atlas. "Make yourself useful," he said. "Tell me which exit gets us downtown." I traced the route and explained that we needed to remain on the interstate until the next major interchange. Brooke leaned forward between the seats and insisted she had seen a sign for downtown behind us. Randall immediately followed her suggestion. 10 minutes later, we were moving in the wrong direction through construction traffic. I told him we needed to turn around. "Stop confusing everyone," Patricia said. By the time we reached the studio, Brooke's appointment had been reassigned. She ran back to the SUV crying and announced that I had destroyed her future. Randall refused to admit he had ignored my directions. Patricia said I should have spoken more clearly. Brooke kicked the back of my seat and told me I ruined everything I touched. I expected us to return home. Instead, Randall drove deeper into downtown Chicago. No one explained where we were going. He stopped speaking entirely, which was worse than shouting because it meant he was planning something. When the red brick clock tower of Chicago Union Station appeared ahead, he finally looked at me through the rearview mirror. "You keep acting like you're smarter than everyone," he said. "So now you're going to prove it." Part 3. Chicago Union Station. By late afternoon, Randall pulled beside an entrance to Chicago Union Station and told me to take my backpack. I asked why, but he said I needed to get out and ask someone how to reach Fort Wayne. His voice sounded so casual that I assumed this was another punishment disguised as a lesson. I thought he wanted me to speak to an employee, return to the SUV, and repeat the directions. I stepped onto the sidewalk with my backpack. The doors locked behind me. Randall lowered his window just far enough for me to hear him. "Let's see how that idiot finds her way home." Patricia laughed. She covered her mouth, but not because she was horrified. She was trying not to laugh too loudly. Brooke leaned across the back seat and looked directly at me. "She doesn't belong in this family anyway." Then the SUV entered traffic. At first, I believed they would circle the block. Randall enjoyed frightening me and then acting as though I had failed a test by becoming afraid. I stood near the entrance and watched every dark blue vehicle that approached. Each time one slowed down, I lifted my backpack and prepared to run toward it. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 40. I went inside and checked what I had with me. There were $14 in my wallet, my school identification card, 2 pencils, a notebook, and half a granola bar. I did not own a mobile phone. Randall said only children with social lives needed phones, and according to him, I did not qualify. I found a public telephone and called our home number. The phone rang until the answering machine picked up. I tried again. No one answered. I left a message saying I was inside the station and would wait near the main entrance. My voice sounded calm because I was still trying to prove I could pass whatever test Randall had invented. I studied the ticket board and quickly understood that $14 would not get me back to Indiana. I examined a transit map, hoping there might be a sequence of local buses that could take me closer. I copied several route numbers into my notebook, returned to the entrance, waited, and then checked the map again. That was how Denise Holloway noticed me. Denise managed one of the small food counters inside the station. She, Snorts, had seen me cross the concourse several times without buying anything or meeting anyone. She approached slowly and asked whether I was waiting for a train. "My family is coming back," I told her. "What kind of car are they driving? A blue SUV. Do you know where they parked?" They didn't park. Denise did not touch me or speak in the overly sweet voice adults sometimes use when they have already decided a child is lying. She asked what time they had left and whether I had spoken to them since. I repeated that they were coming back. Then she asked what my father had said before he drove away. That was when I started crying. Denise closed her food counter early and contacted station security. Officer Marcus Bell brought me to a quiet office overlooking the concourse. He gave me water and asked me to tell the story from the beginning. I expected him to say I had misunderstood my father's joke. Instead, he requested footage from the exterior cameras. The recording showed me leaving the SUV. It showed the doors locking. It showed Patricia and Brooke turning toward me while Randall lowered his window. Most importantly, it showed the vehicle leaving and never circling back. Marcus asked for my home telephone number. When the police contacted Randall, he claimed I had become angry over Brooke's missed audition and had jumped out of the SUV. He said I was manipulative, dramatic, and always trying to punish the family. He promised to retrieve me the following morning after I had calmed down. Marcus told him that leaving a 12-year-old child in another state overnight was not an acceptable solution. Randall became angry. I could hear parts of the conversation through the office door. He said parents had the right to teach consequences. He accused the police of rewarding bad behavior, when Marcus ordered him to return immediately. Randall said the family had already driven too far. Patricia supported his version. She claimed they had searched nearby streets before going home. The camera footage proved otherwise. Child welfare officials in Illinois contacted authorities in Indiana, while officers visited the Mercer home. A caseworker named Erin Walsh arrived at the station. She sat across from me and explained that I would stay with an emergency foster family until the adults determined what should happen next. "Do you feel safe returning home?" she asked. I remembered my father's smile as he drove away. I remembered my mother laughing. I remembered Brooke saying I did not belong. "No," I answered. "I'm not going back." That was the first important decision I had ever been allowed to make for myself. 2 days later, Erin received copies of the security footage and the recorded police call. Randall was still describing the abandonment as discipline. Patricia was still worried about what their customers might hear. Brooke had already told her friends that I had ruined her audition and run away for attention. None of them asked whether I had been frightened. None of them asked whether I had eaten. They were concerned only that someone had finally seen what happened when no audience was present. 3 days later, I entered the Dawson house in Oak Park, carrying one grocery bag filled with borrowed clothes. Thomas and Rebecca Dawson had fostered children for several years. Thomas was a custom cabinet maker who restored doors, staircases, and built-in shelves in older homes. Rebecca worked as an elementary school counselor. Their 11-year-old daughter, Lily, waited in the hallway while Erin introduced us. Lily immediately made me nervous. I assumed every family needed one favorite daughter, and I expected her to protect her position. Instead, she led me upstairs, showed me the room we would share, and said I could have the bed beside the window. Then she cleared 2 shelves from her bookcase without being asked. I did not trust any of them. I hid crackers under my pillow because I believed food might be withheld as punishment. I asked permission before using drinking glasses, towels, or pencils when I spilled milk at breakfast. I froze and started apologizing before anyone reacted. Thomas handed me a cloth and said, "It's milk, Paige, not a criminal confession." For several months, I refused to enter any train station. Even seeing one in a movie made my chest tighten. Thomas, snorts, never forced me to discuss Chicago. Instead, he invited me into his workshop. He showed me how to identify wood grain, repair loose joints, and calculate angles for cabinets. The first time I corrected one of his measurements, he checked it, smiled, and said, "Good catch." I waited for the punishment. It never came. Meanwhile, Randall and Patricia were given a reunification plan. It required counseling, parenting classes, supervised visits, and acknowledgement that leaving me in Chicago had placed me in danger. They attended only when their attorney warned them that every absence would be documented. During our first supervised visit, Randall ordered me to tell the caseworker that I had overreacted. Patricia asked whether people at school knew about the investigation. Brooke complained that the scandal had damaged her chances of securing another advertising job. "No one asked what I remembered about the station," Randall said. "You knew we would come back eventually." "You told the police you planned to wait until morning," I answered. "That doesn't mean we abandoned you." The caseworker wrote something in her file. Randall saw her writing and became furious with me for making him look bad. Brooke sent me one letter during the entire legal process. I opened it expecting an apology. Instead, she wrote that I had destroyed the family by speaking to the police. She said Randall's employees were asking questions, Patricia had stopped attending church events, and Brooke's friends were treating her differently. Her final sentence said, "You always wanted to take everything away from me." I never answered. The court process continued for more than a year. Randall and Patricia missed counseling sessions, argued with social workers, and refused to admit that their actions had been dangerous. Every explanation focused on my supposed disobedience. The security footage prevented them from rewriting the event, but it could not force them to accept responsibility. Eventually, reunification efforts ended. Thomas and Rebecca sat with me at the kitchen table and asked whether I wanted to remain with them permanently. Rebecca made it clear that I did not owe them an immediate answer. Thomas said adoption would not erase where I came from, but it could give me legal control over where I went next. I thought about the Mercer house, where love had always been something I had to earn. Then I looked at Lily, who had never once treated my presence as a threat. "I want to stay," I said. At the adoption hearing, I kept my first name and changed only my surname. Paige Mercer became Paige Dawson. Keeping Paige mattered to me. The Mercers had spent years telling me that everything about me was wrong. I refused to surrender the one part of my identity that had always belonged to me. After the hearing, Lily introduced me to one of her school friends. "This is my sister Paige," she said. There was no hesitation in her voice. No joke. No condition attached. For the first time, the word sister felt safe. 8 years after my adoption, I returned to Chicago Union Station as part of a university preservation project. I was studying architecture with a concentration in historic preservation, and our class had been assigned to document how older public buildings could be renovated without losing their original character. Thomas traveled to Chicago with me, but he waited at a coffee shop across the street. He did not hold my arm or tell me I needed to conquer my fear. He simply said he would remain nearby for as long as I needed. I stood outside the entrance for almost 20 minutes. Then I walked inside alone. The building looked smaller than it did in my memory. I recognized the concourse, the ticket boards, and the corridor leading toward the office where Marcus had interviewed me. My hands shook while I photographed stonework, lighting fixtures, door frames, and damaged signs. I kept expecting the 12-year-old version of myself to appear near the entrance, watching for a blue SUV. She never did. That day taught me something important. The station had not betrayed me. It had sheltered me. Denise had noticed me there. Marcus had believed me there. The first adults who refused to excuse Randall's behavior had found me inside that building. After graduation, I joined a restoration company in Chicago. I worked on aging libraries, theaters, courthouses, schools, and train depots. My specialty became adaptive reuse, preserving the history of a structure while transforming it into something safe and functional for modern communities. I paid close attention to entrances, sightlines, waiting areas, lighting, and spaces where frightened people could ask for help without standing in the center of a crowd. Lily remained my closest friend. She became a housing services coordinator and helped families locate temporary accommodations during financial emergencies. We spoke several times a week and spent every major holiday together. We disagreed sometimes, but our disagreements never became campaigns to humiliate each other. Lily taught me that sisterhood did not require one person to become smaller so the other could feel important. I met Ethan Brooks while restoring a century-old courthouse. He was a structural engineer assigned to evaluate the foundation. Our relationship developed slowly because I struggled with dependence. I maintained separate accounts, double-checked every shared expense, and kept an emergency bag in my car long after there was any logical reason to do so. Ethan never mocked those habits. He asked what made me feel secure and respected the answer. We married 4 years later. I kept Dawson as my professional and legal surname. At 29, 2 former colleagues and I founded Dawson Heritage Restoration. Our company restored historic properties and converted abandoned buildings into offices, community centers, boutique hotels, and affordable apartments. We succeeded because we did not treat old structures as decorative objects. We learned how people actually moved through them and what communities needed them to become. One of our largest projects was the restoration of an abandoned textile mill in North Carolina. The work brought Ethan and me to the Charlotte area, where we eventually purchased a neglected 1920s home outside the city. The house was large, but it had broken windows, damaged floors, and decades of poor repairs. We spent 2 years restoring it room by room. Thomas built the library shelves. Rebecca chose the garden plants. Lily claimed one of the guest rooms for holiday visits. Every part of that house represented something the Mercer family had never given me: permanence without fear. I never contacted Randall, Patricia, or Brooke. I did not follow them online. I did not search for evidence that they regretted what they had done. For 20 years, they made no serious attempt to contact me. Either. Then, in March 2026, an architectural magazine published a profile about our restoration of a historic railway depot. The article included my full name, a photograph, the city where our company was based, and one paragraph explaining that an experience at a train station during childhood had influenced my belief that public buildings should contain visible, accessible places for people seeking help. It did not list my home address. Brooke found the article while searching my name after an argument with Randall and Patricia about money, using SNORTs, public business registrations and property records. She eventually identified the neighborhood where Ethan and I lived. By then, the Mercers were no longer searching for the child they had abandoned. They were searching for the successful woman they believed could rescue them, while my company was growing. Randall, Patricia, and Brooke were spending money they did not have. Mercer Heating and Cooling remained profitable for many years, but Randall treated the company account as his personal wallet. He purchased expensive vehicles, upgraded the family home, and charged vacations to business credit cards. Whenever an accountant raised concerns, Randall insisted that more customers would solve everything. Patricia controlled the bookkeeping. Instead of confronting him, she moved payments between accounts, delayed tax deposits, and used new credit to cover older bills. Maintaining the appearance of success mattered more to her than admitting the business was becoming unstable. Brooke never developed financial independence because Randall and Patricia protected her from every consequence. Her advertising career ended before adulthood, but the family continued treating her as someone destined for extraordinary success. When one plan failed, they financed another. First, Brooke opened an online bridal accessory store. She ordered far more inventory than she could sell, and blamed social media algorithms when the business closed. Next came a lash and beauty studio. Patricia borrowed against the house to pay for renovations, equipment, and 6 months of rent. Brooke stopped arriving regularly after customer reviews became negative. Randall paid the remaining lease. Her third venture was an event planning company. She spent heavily on branding, photography, and an office suite before securing enough clients to support any of it. When that company failed, she blamed former friends for refusing to recommend her. By then, the home carried a second mortgage. Randall had used business credit to cover household expenses, and several company vehicles had overdue payments. Experienced technicians began leaving because paychecks arrived late. Customers canceled contracts after missed appointments and unfinished repairs. Randall blamed disloyal employees. Patricia blamed the economy. Brooke blamed customers who did not appreciate quality. None of them changed their spending. The company lost its largest commercial account after Randall failed to renew required documentation on time. Tax authorities filed liens. 2 service vehicles were repossessed. The lender began foreclosure proceedings on the Mercer home. That was when Brooke searched for me. She showed the magazine article to Randall and Patricia. Instead of discussing an apology, they calculated what they believed I could afford. Randall found photographs of restored properties associated with my company and assumed I personally owned all of them. Patricia searched public records until she found the deed for my house. Their first plan was to ask me to pay the mortgage. When the foreclosure moved forward too quickly, they decided I should purchase another house for them. Brooke suggested that she could work for my company in public relations despite having no experience in architecture or restoration. They never contacted my office. Randall insisted that appearing in person would make it more difficult for me to refuse. He still believed surprise, pressure, and the word family would place him in control. Their home was foreclosed on. They stayed in an inexpensive motel until their remaining money ran low. After that, they slept in their SUV for several nights. Lily later confirmed that local shelters, food programs, and emergency housing services had been available. But Randall rejected them because he considered asking strangers for help humiliating. Apparently, asking the daughter he abandoned was different. They spent most of their remaining cash on fuel to reach North Carolina. By the time they arrived, their phones were close to being disconnected. Their clothing was packed into bags, and Brooke had not eaten a full meal in several days. Their hardship was real. So was their belief that I was obligated to solve it. My first doorbell alert arrived while I was reviewing construction documents in my home office. Ethan was downstairs preparing dinner. I opened the security feed and recognized Randall before he spoke. Age, snorts, had changed his face, but not the way he stood when he expected obedience. Ethan came into the office after the bell rang for the 6th time. "Do you want me to answer?" he asked. "No," I said. "This is my door. I decide what happens here." I activated the speaker. Randall asked for forgiveness. Patricia commented on the size of my house. Brooke said they had not eaten in 3 days. When they called me their child, I answered, "Which child? Whose child? I'm not your child." Randall's expression hardened. "You made that choice 20 years ago," I said. "Now leave." They did not leave. After I told them to leave, Randall planted both hands against the locked security door. "We drove all the way from Indiana," he said. "You can't dismiss us like strangers. You are strangers. We're your parents. You left me at a train station in another state." His jaw tightened. I admit the station thing went too far. The station thing, 20 years had passed, and he still could not call it abandonment. Randall said families did not turn their backs on one another. I reminded him that I had learned otherwise from him. He argued that I was being childish and holding a grudge over one mistake. "One mistake does not last 20 years, I said. "Refusing responsibility for 20 years does." Patricia began crying. For a moment, I wondered whether she finally understood what she had done. Then she looked through the glass beside the door. "You have so much space," she said. "I can see a staircase. There must be 4 or 5 bedrooms. We wouldn't bother you." That sentence removed any doubt. She was not grieving the loss of her daughter. She was evaluating available square footage. Brooke stepped toward the camera. "We only need somewhere temporary. Once we get back on our feet, we'll leave. You had 20 years to contact me. We thought the Dawsons turned you against us. They didn't take me away. You left me." Brooke rolled her eyes, exactly as she had when she was 15. "They gave you everything. College, connections, a business. Meanwhile, I had to struggle. I almost laughed. Even now." She considered my adoption an unfair advantage she should have received. "You were given acting classes, pageants, businesses, loans, and every second chance our parents could finance." I said, "I was given a grocery bag of borrowed clothes because you left me in Chicago. That's not what happened. There is security footage." Brooke looked at Randall, then back at the camera. "You always use that footage to make us look terrible. I have never shown it to anyone outside the legal process. You made yourselves look terrible. I told them clearly that I would not provide accommodation, money, employment, transportation, or further contact. I instructed them to leave the property. Randall pressed the doorbell again. Ethan had remained several feet behind me, allowing me to control the conversation. When Randall began striking the security door with the side of his hand and demanding that I come outside, Ethan contacted the police. I stopped responding. The three of them continued arguing on the porch. Patricia insisted that I needed time to calm down. Brooke complained about the cold. Randall said I would regret humiliating him. 2 officers arrived approximately 15 minutes later. I spoke to them through a side entrance while Ethan provided the doorbell recordings. Randall claimed there had been a family misunderstanding. Patricia said they had traveled to reconcile. Brooke insisted I had invited them and then changed my mind. The recordings showed otherwise. The officers ordered them to leave and issued a documented trespass warning. Randall argued until one officer explained that returning to the property could lead to his removal and citation. As they walked toward their SUV, Brooke turned and shouted, "You're abandoning your own family." I did not answer. Later that evening, I sent Lily the information they had given us. Because she worked in housing services, she was able to verify that their foreclosure and financial problems were broadly true. She also confirmed that emergency shelters, meal programs, and temporary housing services were available nearby. "They need help," Lily told me. "But that doesn't mean the help has to be your house." That was the difference between my 2 sisters. Brooke used suffering as a weapon. Lily recognized suffering without demanding that I sacrifice myself to resolve it. The next morning, Ethan noticed the Mercer SUV parked near the edge of our property. Randall approached the side gate despite the warning. Brooke stood near the vehicle recording with her phone. When I stepped into view behind the locked gate, Brooke raised her voice for the camera. "Our wealthy sister is letting her starving family sleep in a car." She wanted a reaction she could post online. She wanted me to become the villain in a story where the first 20 years had been removed. I did not argue. I contacted the police and explained that a trespass warning had been issued the previous evening. Randall tried to open the gate. "You're going to call the police on your own father. You taught me that actions have consequences," I said. I finally learned the lesson, because the previous warning had been documented. The second incident carried consequences. Randall was removed from the property and cited in connection with the repeated trespass. Patricia and Brooke were ordered to leave. The officers gave them information about emergency lodging and food services. My attorney sent formal notice that all communication had to stop. We preserved the security footage, doorbell recordings, police reports, and every message they had sent. Brooke found one final number that I had not blocked. Her message said, "You destroyed this family 20 years ago and now you've done it again." I read it once. Then I blocked the number. I did not send money. I did not visit them. I did not contact the shelter system to request updates. Public documents connected to Randall's citation later indicated that the family had entered a temporary motel program. Another filing listed a warehouse employer for Brooke. That was all I learned, and it was more than I had asked to know. Their hardship did not disappear when I closed my door. It simply became theirs to face. Randall lost the authority he had always assumed he would hold over me. Patricia lost the image of a perfect family she had protected more fiercely than any actual child. Brooke was forced to seek employment without another business being financed for her. None of them received access to my home or my life. Several months later, Dawson Heritage Restoration accepted a project at Chicago Union Station. We donated the design work and partnered with local organizations to renovate an unused office near the main concourse. It became a secure assistance room for stranded miners, separated travelers, and vulnerable passengers waiting for social services or law enforcement. We named it the Denise Holloway Assistance Room. Denise attended the opening ceremony. She was retired by then, but I recognized her immediately when I thanked her for noticing me 20 years earlier. She shook her head. "You are trying very hard to be invisible," she said. "Someone just needed to keep looking." I entered that station at 12, believing I had been discarded because I was not intelligent, useful, or lovable enough. I returned at 32, knowing that their cruelty had never measured my worth. It had measured their character. I did not need forgiveness to heal. I did not need revenge to prove that I had survived. I needed boundaries strong enough to protect the life I had built. Someone's hardship can be genuine without becoming your responsibility. Compassion does not require unlimited access. Blood does not erase betrayal. And sometimes, closing the door is not an act of cruelty. Sometimes, it is the healthiest decision you will ever make. We hope the story gave you both a satisfying ending and a meaningful lesson. This video is completely fictional and created only for dramatic reflection and educational entertainment. We hope it reminds you that protecting your heart does not make you cold. It means you have finally learned to be careful with what others once treated carelessly. You can remain kind while becoming wiser about who deserves access to your trust.